And welcome back, everybody. Frank Domano is our guest. Frank continues to write for the Observer-Dispatch and is very active in local history matters. In fact, you've been writing a series on Utica's former mayors, Frank. When did that start?
Started in April. I began with 7 village presidents when Utica was a village and not a city. And then in 1832, Utica became a city, and Joseph Kirkland was its first mayor. And my original plans were just to, write a little blurb about, there were 71 mayors from 1832 to 2019. A little blurb, but as I got involved in it, I started thinking, well, I wonder what interesting things that were happening during their administration, and who were some of these men? They're named. I mean, we know the Roscoe Conklins and the Horatio Seymours, but there's so many others that we just don't know about. I won't mention his name because I don't want to give it away, but I'm writing about one now, doing the research. You talk about mudslinging today. Wow, he was running for mayor. The Republicans did not want him in. The Democrats did not want him in, so he ran as an independent. And the Republicans and Democrats got their mudslingers together, and
oh boy,
they accused him of being a Confederate spy during the Civil War, and he wasn't. They said he was not an American citizen. So you start reading things like that, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Just like I titled my book "History for the Fun of It." To me, it makes history so much more interesting when you read these things. Reading about dates and all this other stuff can get boring. But
will you take the series right up to Mayor Palmieri?
Yeah, I'm going to go right up to that's
And
my
refresh
plans.
my
I'm in the late 19th century now. And it's tough to get information on some of these people. So I can't wait to get into the 20th century when it'll be easier.
Is there somebody that, and I think I know who your favorite mayor in history was.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second. But as you've been writing about these mayors upcoming, is a mayor jumped out at you as saying, wow, this guy was pretty good? Well,
there were a couple reform mayors. This is why I always talk about my favorite mayor right now, but as I go along, there are a couple. There was a Thomas Kinney, Kinney, who was a reform mayor. There was a lot of gambling and prostitution going on in Utica in the 1880s, and he went in as a reform mayor, and he was tough, and he really straightened the city out. And Utica was getting a bad reputation. The New York Times were writing terrible editorials about the city. And you can figure the city of Utica was a real important city at that time. The home of Roscoe Conklin and Horatio Seymour, and James Schoolcraft Sherman was just starting his career. And this mayor really cleaned house, But right now, as we've said before, my favorite mayor is Boyd Golder.
And you haven't written about Boyd Golder yet?
No, he's mayor 45 to 55 during the so-called Loom the Boom era. Mm-hmm. Tough guy, professional wrestler. He used to tour on a carnival.
He was a big guy.
Big guy. He came here from Pennsylvania to open a gym, and he was way ahead of his time, and. But when he became mayor, the city really was starting to lose its textile mills. Mm. This is right after World War II, 1945, and he always doesn't take all the credit. And the reason I know all this, when he was 85, the Oneida County was and his friends were going to give him a birthday party. And on his 85th birthday. So about 2 weeks before, I called him. I was writing Frankly Speaking at the time. And I said, Mayor, can we get together and just talk So for 3 afternoons, from about 1 to 5, long afternoons, we were in the conference room at the OD. I didn't have any tape. I never took tapes anyway, but no notes, and we just talked. And I ended up writing a 3-part series about it. But I learned a lot about what they did as the mills were leaving. This group that would meet at the Fort Schuyler Club for lunch, including Goldie, what they did to attract the GEs and the Bendix, the Chicago Pneumatics. Fascinating stories.
And what did they do, Frank?
Well, you know, one of the things they planned. This was a time we really had connections in Albany and in Washington. John Train, who was president of Utica Mutual Insurance, was a big Republican, a close friend of Governor Thomas E. Dewey, who was governor of New York. And word had gotten around that this company, Chicago Pneumatic, from Cleveland, Ohio, was thinking about building a multi-million-dollar plant in the Northeast. Well, New York, Vermont, New England, all the New England states, you know, they were all after this. Well, this group that got together to try to bring new industry in heard about it, but they couldn't get information exactly what did Chicago Pneumatic want. So one of these meetings, John Train picked up the phone, called the governor. You know, Tom, this is John, that type of thing. And he really convinced Dewey to give him, well, he went through the Commerce Department to give him information what exactly Chicago Pneumatic wanted.
Wow.
Well,
We're going to go to a commercial break.
Okay,
Frank Tomano's our guest. Short break, right back.